They bought the house because it was charming. That's how Olivia described it to her husband, Michael, when she first saw the listing. It was a 1920s Tudor-style home tucked into a leafy neighborhood of Beverly Hills, far from the loud, glittery sprawl of Los Angeles. Ivy crawled up the brick exterior. There was a sunroom with leaded glass windows, a garden that had long ago been designed with care, and an old-fashioned pool shaped like a teardrop. Olivia was a screenwriter. Michael taught film history at UCLA. The house had a storybook feel they couldn't resist. They closed the deal quickly, almost too quickly. The real estate agent, a woman named Cheryl with overprocessed hair and a nervous smile, had disclosed the history only briefly. It used to belong to Gilda Radner. Yes, that Gilda, the comedienne, passed away in the late 80s, poor thing. Ovarian cancer. Michael had paused. Did anyone die here? No, Cheryl said. She passed at Cedars-Sinai. But she loved this house. They moved in on a Tuesday. By Thursday, things began to feel off. It came faintly, from the hallway outside the bedroom, like a woman chuckling to herself. Not menacing, almost pleasant. Playful. Olivia heard it first late one night while finishing a script. She got up, expecting to find Michael watching old comedy sketches. But he was asleep, headphones in, laptop shut. The second time it happened, Michael heard it too. They both froze, eyes locked. You heard that? She whispered. He nodded. They went searching. Nothing. No open windows. No neighbors home. No television or radio left on. That night, they found the TV in the den turned on by itself. Static. White noise. No channel. Just the gentle hum of ghosts. Olivia laughed nervously. Okay. Maybe it's the wiring. They called an electrician the next day. Place is old, he said. But the wiring's sound. The next week, the radio in the kitchen played without being touched, only old vaudeville songs or classic sketch comedy bits. Sometimes, Olivia could swear she heard her voice through the speakers. It's always something followed by a burst of laughter, like from a live audience. Chills crawled up her spine. They discovered the writing desk in the upstairs study during their second month in the house. It had been locked until then, antique, probably original to the house. Michael picked it open with a letter opener, and inside were old letters, notebooks, and a single cassette tape labeled Radner Final Set, NYC 1987. They played it on an old cassette deck. It was Gilda, performing, laughing. But in between the laughter, they noticed something else, moments of silence where the crowd should have responded, but didn't. Pauses. Breathing. A whisper. I miss this place. Later that night, Olivia dreamed she was sitting in the sunroom with a woman who looked like Gilda Radner, tired eyes, wide smile. They drank tea and talked about writing. Olivia woke up with the sensation of having actually spoken, actually listened. On the table beside her bed was a piece of paper she didn't recognize. Her name was written on it in someone else's hand. Underneath, tell the truth. That's the only punchline that ever lands. Michael began to change. He grew restless, distracted. The laughter, he said, was starting to mock him. It wasn't friendly anymore. She's not letting us settle in, he said one morning. Like we're guests in her house. Olivia tried to keep things grounded. We're not guests. We bought it. But things escalated. Books rearranged themselves. Lights flickered only in the study. One night, Olivia found Michael staring into the mirror in the guest bathroom, mumbling something under his breath. When she asked what he was doing, he said, "She said I'm not funny." Who? He just looked at her. They left town for a weekend, hoping space would help. But when they returned, all the photos on the walls had been turned upside down except the one they had hung of Gilda in her SNL days. That one stayed straight, smiling at them from the hallway. They brought in a psychic. Not because they believed, but because they were desperate. The woman, tall and pale, walked through the house in silence for nearly an hour before speaking. She loved it here, the psychic said. She still does. Can she leave? Olivia asked. She doesn't want to hurt you, but she wants to be remembered. This house, this was the last place she felt joy. She's afraid to go. She thinks the laughter stops if she leaves. So they made a decision. They set up a little corner in the sunroom, a shelf with her photo, a few of her books, even the cassette tape. Olivia wrote a one-act play about her. Michael lectured about her life at UCLA. They opened the house once a year on her birthday, let fans come in, share memories, laugh. And slowly the house quieted. The laughter still comes sometimes. Soft. In the hallway. During storms or just after a good joke. But it's no longer threatening. It's just Gilda. Still here. Still laughing. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story. The days began to stretch longer after that slow, amberlit afternoons where dust swirled like motes in a forgotten theater, suspended in the golden light that poured through the tall, arched windows of the sunroom. The house itself seemed to exhale, its old bones sighing with relief, its doorways less watchful. Olivia noticed the change most acutely during the quiet hours of the late morning, when she would sit with her coffee just inside the sunroom's arc, script pages spread on the antique table, her laptop closed, forgotten. There was a weight to the silence in that room now, a silence not empty, but full of memory, full of someone. The small Gilda altar, as Michael half-jokingly called it, sat beneath the narrow window facing the garden. A framed black-and-white portrait taken sometime in the late 70s. Gilda looking off camera with a tired, knowing smile was surrounded by a few personal items they'd found in the locked desk. A lipstick tube, a notepad covered in doodles and half-written lines. My therapist says I should stop dating sad men, so I told him to leave. And the cassette tape, now sealed in a clear acrylic case. Olivia lit a candle there each morning. She didn't know why. It just felt polite. But the house had a way of reminding them that presence, whether flesh or spirit, was not always predictable, nor necessarily content. As winter edged into Los Angeles, with its faintly cooler evenings and drifting scent of chimney smoke in the air, something began to ripple through the house again. Not sharp, not violent, but real. It started in the garden. They'd always thought of the garden as part of the house's gentler side. The way the rose vines clung to the back trellis, the smell of lavender that wafted through the French doors in the early evening, the creak of the old wooden gate at the rear of the lot, it had all made the place feel enchanted, suspended in time. Michael would sit out there with a book and a tumbler of whiskey. Olivia would draft dialogue while the neighbor's cat made its silent patrol along the garden wall. But in early February, something changed in the rhythm of the garden. It no longer felt like a sanctuary. One night, Olivia stood at the sink washing dishes when she saw a shape just beyond the hedges. It was dusk. The sky was melting from peach to indigo. She turned off the water and squinted. The shape didn't move. It stood near the fig tree, tall but hunched, a silhouette where there should have been nothing. It wasn't Gilda. It wasn't feminine, not in any way. It was gray, heavy, cold. When Michael went outside with a flashlight, the shape was gone, but the garden had turned wrong. That was the only word Olivia could find later when she tried to describe it. The soil underfoot smelled sour. The roses were browning too early, collapsing at their stems like they'd been touched by something sick. For the next 3 nights, they heard the crunch of footsteps on the gravel path that wound behind the kitchen door, slow and dragging. No one was ever there. No raccoons. No wind. No evidence. Michael began to talk less. He spent hours in the study with the desk open, leafing through Gilda's scribbles, her letters, the pages that had no structure but were raw with loneliness and wit. Olivia would find him hunched over them, eyes moving slowly as if they were decoding something invisible between the lines. He began drawing the curtains in the middle of the day. He said the light was too flat, too fake. She thought maybe he was getting depressed again, or that the house was wearing on him, or that Gilda was not the only thing here. One morning, Olivia found an envelope taped to the bedroom door. No postage, yellowed at the edges. Her name on the front in what looked like fountain pen ink. Inside, there was a single sheet of hotel stationery from somewhere in New York. The handwriting was sharp, full of personality, looping in wide arcs like someone used to performing even on paper. It read, "You can't keep what was never yours, but you can listen. That's what the walls are for. They echo back what you forget." She brought the note to Michael. He stared at it for a long time, then asked, very quietly, "Did you write this?" "No." "You sure?" "Michael, I didn't write that." He folded the letter in half and placed it between the pages of one of Gilda's notebooks. Then he walked out of the room and didn't speak for the rest of the day. At night, the house made new sounds. Long sighs beneath the floorboards. Faint tapping against the leaded windows, even when there was no wind. The refrigerator would hum a little louder when Olivia entered the kitchen, almost like it was announcing her. The radio, silent for weeks, suddenly played the same song twice in one night. "I'm Through with Love." Gilda had performed it once, Olivia remembered, on SNL, as Roseanne Rosianadana in an uncharacteristically somber moment. It played softly, the voice scratchy and low, as if the past were trying to crawl its way back into the room. Olivia couldn't sleep anymore. She stayed up late in the living room, wrapped in an old cardigan, drinking lukewarm tea and watching the shadows shift across the ceiling. She didn't feel threatened exactly, but not quite safe either. The sense was subtler than that, like living beside a wild animal that had once been tamed but had started to remember its old instincts. One evening, after midnight, she wandered into the sunroom and found the candle by Gilda's picture already lit. The flame didn't flicker. It stood still and tall, as if held in place by something invisible. The room smelled faintly of roses, and somewhere, just barely within hearing, someone whispered her name. Not Olivia, just her name, soft, like it had been read from a script. Spring crept in almost without color. The jacarandas bloomed across Los Angeles like smudges of violet ink, but in Olivia and Michael's garden, the trees remained bare, their branches trembling against the soft wind, reluctant to bloom. The fig tree hadn't budded. The roses continued to die mid-bloom, petals curling inward like fists. A gardener came to assess it, said the soil was fine, the watering schedule sound. "It's like something's pulling the life out," he murmured, brushing his calloused fingers against a fallen petal. "Like the roots are listening to something we can't hear." Olivia didn't mention the laughter anymore. Not even to Michael. It still came softly, occasionally, in places it shouldn't. Behind closed doors, under floorboards, in the static of the baby monitor they kept for no reason, since there was no child. The laughter wasn't always Gilda's. Sometimes it was too low. Sometimes too slow, like it was struggling to remember how a human laugh was supposed to sound. Olivia began to dread it, not because it was loud or threatening, but because it always stopped the moment she acknowledged it. And then there was only silence, the kind that lingered, thick and breathless, like something just left the room. Michael had grown distant, not cruel, just removed. He still made her tea in the mornings but stopped sitting with her while she drank it. He wandered the house barefoot, always holding something from Gilda's collection, a letter, a note, a bracelet they found tucked in the attic behind a rusted lamp. He whispered to himself. Once, Olivia caught him mouthing lines from an old Radner monologue, his eyes unfocused. "It helps her rest," he said when she confronted him. "She needs her words in the air." "Michael," she said carefully, "they're not spells, they're jokes." He didn't answer. Instead, he walked into the study, gently closed the door, and didn't emerge until past midnight. Olivia slept alone. She began researching, quietly, late at night, with the laptop dimmed and her headphones in, as though afraid the house might be listening. It had started with curiosity. Who else had lived here before Gilda? Had she bought it after she married Gene Wilder? Was it theirs? The public records weren't helpful at first. The address was listed under a holding company in the 60s, and before that, the trail went cold. She found a local librarian, a woman in her 70s named Marcia, who remembered the house well. "Oh, honey, that house has always had a shadow on it," Marcia said through the phone. "Even before Gilda. My aunt used to say it was built on a wrong turn. Not cursed exactly, just out of step." "Out of step with what?" Olivia asked. "With everything." It was an odd thing to say, but Marcia went on. "In the 1940s, she said, a silent film actress had lived there, one of those forgotten names from the tail end of the silent era. A woman who vanished before sound could find her. Not dead, just gone. Her name was Birdie Sloan. Beautiful, eccentric, and rumored to throw seances in the sunroom. She believed in spirit comedy, Marcia said. Thought ghosts could be made to laugh their way into peace. There were no obituaries, no police records, just a single newspaper clipping from 1946. Actress Birdie Sloan abandons career, vanishes from public view, and a photo, black and white, soft focus. Birdie in the garden of Olivia's house, sitting at the same iron table, holding a teacup and smiling directly at the lens. Olivia stared at it for a long time. There was something in the eyes. Not sadness. Not madness. Something else, like she'd already joined the past and was only borrowing a few final minutes in the present. The next morning, Olivia stood in the center of the sunroom, barefoot, a scarf tied around her shoulders. The light was milky and thin, filtering through the warped glass panes like it had traveled a long way to get there. She closed her eyes and spoke aloud. "Birdie?" she whispered. "Is that who you are?" The air didn't move, but somewhere behind the wall, the floorboards creaked slowly, then twice in quick succession, like footsteps changing direction. And then a sound, faint, warbled, like something played backward through a dusty phonograph. It was laughter again, but this time it wasn't Gilda. This laugh was older, drawn out, not joyful. The candle near Gilda's photograph sputtered, then flared taller. Olivia stepped back. The teacup on the table, the one she'd placed there 2 nights ago as a kind of quiet offering, suddenly cracked along the rim. Not shattered, just a long, slow fracture that curled like a smile. Michael didn't want to hear about Birdie. "She's not part of this," he said. "You're making this messier than it is." "But what if it's not just Gilda?" Olivia said. "What if she was never alone here? What if someone else was already here, and Gilda stayed because of them?" "She wanted to be here," he said. "That was the point. She told us." "No, she told you." His eyes darkened. For the first time in months, he looked at her like a stranger. He said nothing, just walked out onto the back porch and sat with his back to her. Knees hunched, arms resting on his thighs like a child trying to disappear into his own skin. She didn't follow him. Instead, she turned back to the study. The desk was still open. The drawers were crowded now with copied pages from Birdie Sloan's handful of remaining scripts, silent shorts from the 20s, most of them lost, some existing only as stills. Olivia sifted through them, feeling the texture of time on her fingertips. Her heart beat heavily, like someone was walking toward her down a long hallway. In the bottom drawer was something she hadn't seen before. Playbill, yellowed and thin. It read, "An Evening of Spirit Theater, presented by Miss Birdie Sloan. Live from the other side, one night only." No date, no address, no theater. Just those words and a faint fingerprint on the lower right corner. She placed the playbill beside Gilda's photo and felt something in her chest tighten, not fear, but gravity. Like a weight had been placed on her ribs from the inside. The candle flickered again, and this time it blew out on its own. Outside, the wind picked up. The fig tree creaked. The door to the attic, shut for weeks, slowly opened with a tired, dragging groan. And upstairs, someone began to laugh. Olivia climbed to the attic alone. The narrow stairs groaned underfoot, the walls on either side pressing in like they remembered people who'd come up before and never come back down the same. Dust floated in columns of light from a single gable window, and the air had that cold, still quality of a sealed room that had learned how to hold its breath. In the far corner, beneath a moth-eaten tarp, she found an old trunk. Inside were stacks of reel-to-reel audio tapes, handwritten scripts on onion skin paper, and a faded photograph of Gilda and a woman Olivia didn't recognize, elegant, eyes too large for her face. On the back of the photo, in looping script, "Birdie, she never left. Neither will I." Downstairs, Michael called her name once, then fell silent. When she turned to leave the attic, the light from the gable window had changed. It was late afternoon when she'd gone up, but now it was nearly dark. Hours had passed. She hadn't noticed. That night, she found Michael asleep in the sunroom chair, smiling faintly in his sleep. The candle by Gilda's portrait was burning again, though neither of them had lit it. From then on, the house was calm. No more laughter, No more cracked teacups or footsteps. The roses bloomed. The fig tree bore fruit. Even the neighbors commented how peaceful the place had become. And yet, Olivia kept the attic locked. Some nights, when the wind moved just right, she could still hear something upstairs, soft voices, layered over each other like echoes through time. One light laugh, then another, then silence, like the curtain had dropped. And the show finally was over. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story.